right, welcome everyone. I'm Remy. I'm joined by Yorick. We are today in this new format, the staking nerd talk, where we're gonna be talking about different staking questions and topics. But first, I'd like to introduce Yorick. Hey, Yorick, how you doing?
I'm doing great today. It's lovely here in Portugal. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, and I'd like to give you credits for this idea that you came up with, this staking nerd talk. What's your idea behind this?
Basically, I'm gonna shill something here. It's not crypto. I'm a big TrueNAS user. That's my home NAS. And they have something called the TTT, the TrueNAS Tech Talk. They do it once a week, and that's two guys just talking nerdy things. And I thought something like this would be good for home stakers, right? I just talk about what's going on with stake. Definitely not doing it weekly, maybe monthly. Let's see how this goes and then see
Yeah,
what
we'll
we want
see.
to do.
I love your idea. That's why I joined. And let's just go towards our first topic. Let's talk about history expiry. What's the big idea behind this, and like what's EIP 4444?
So why don't we start with the problem statement,
Yeah.
right? So you got a 2 terabyte NVMe, and it's getting a little tight. We've seen this in Discord. People are going, oh, do I have to buy a new one soon? What should I do? I'm pruning. It's not coming down.
Many people are
That's right.
struggling with handling like
They're
disk
struggling.
usage.
Yeah. So if you upgrade to 4 terabyte, you're fine. Just keep trucking. If you didn't, well, 2 terabyte is getting tight. Broader picture, that some of the core devs like to look out, decades ahead. They said if Ethereum is going to be here in 50 years, we cannot keep all of history on all nodes
Exactly.
and require petabytes of storage. That's, insanity. So we need a way, and that's EIP 44s. We need a way to just keep some history locally and keep the state, and eventually maybe even only keep some of the state, but we'll get to that in a bit. So for now, just history. And so that a smaller drive, a 2 terabyte drive will suffice. Maybe eventually 1 terabyte or less will suffice. All the clients have just kept everything so far.
On the execution
So
side, right?
on the execution layer, exactly like you Geth, you Nevermind, your Besu, your Reth, your Aragon, So now this first step towards EIP 44s is to just expire narrowly pre-merge history. So expire the blocks and receipts. This is why this is the nerd talk, right? Expire the blocks and receipts that are pre-merged, that are proof of work, and keep everything proof of stake. This is a first step. We've tried it on Geth and Nevermind. It works great. Brings you down to about 50% disk used, which kicks the can down the road for another year.
Isn't the
We
idea of
expect,
like keeping like just 1 year back of receipts?
yeah, eventually 1 year. Vitalik is even talking 38 days, right? So,
And that begs the
that's
question,
definitely,
like, who's gonna be keeping the remaining of the full history?
it does. And that's not clear yet. One idea is that the portal network will do that, right? So right now, this is a first step towards it. We expect that the clients will have something production ready in June, July, maybe. People who want to seek this now can do so. We've got instructions in the Discord, but it's not a widely deployed idea yet. And there's still time still. People still have disk space to let this run for a few more months before it gets really, really, really tight.
And there's like two clients right now that have some kind of implementation with this, right? We've got Geth and we've got Netamine.
Correct. Yes. And it
Have
works great for both, right?
have you
It's
tried
a, it's a,
them? Have you tried this
I have.
config?
I've personally done that. My little orchestration framework, eth-docker, has an eth prune history command that does that automatically for users. We've got a couple very enterprising users in the Discord who've already used that in production on mainnet. That's a little YOLO, but okay, it works.
So I guess like if you wanted to try this today, you'd have to just add a flag to your config if you're not using fdocker, for instance, and then just restart the
Yeah,
client.
yeah, resync the client. Yeah.
Oh, you have to resync
Geth,
from the original.
yeah,
Yeah,
Nethermind needs to be resynced from scratch. Geth can be pruned and then restarted with a flag.
I see.
It depends really on the client. Most clients will probably require a resync, right? Besu has a pull request open. Aragon has a pull request open. Red doesn't yet. So this is still early as of late May.
I haven't tried it
For this
myself,
feature.
but I'm wondering like where should they be starting then? Like how will they compute the point where they should be starting from?
They start at the first POS block.
Oh, I see.
First proof of stake block is what they start to keep. From there, they keep block and receipts. So that's why I'm saying it's the first step towards full force, right? This isn't rolling expiry of we keep 1 year or we keep 38 days or whatever. It's just let's throw away pre-merge history and be done. And then see how it goes. And then people can lay a portal on top and we get used to this. And then hopefully by next year, this time when we're running out of space again, we either get more expiry or we get the full EIP 4.4s and it's just 1 year rolling.
And this brings me to this whole discussions where there might be more roles for people in the features, especially in terms of like how you run your own node. Like today we have this role where you can run an archive, right? An archive node, in order to have like transaction history from like the past, but then you're not required to do this. You can just run a regular node and be just fine. And then in the future, we might have even more roles for like, do you want to have this whole history of the past? Do you want to have like all the transactions as well? Like in order to support different use cases and especially keep having home stakers and like people who run their own node at home. It's very interesting to have different solutions together.
So why don't we shelve that for a second so we can get into Pectra features that you can tell us all about.
Yeah.
And then we'll revisit this question because we had a question coming on Reddit about that as well.
Sure. All right. Let's move on to the Pectra. Well, we just had Pectra on mainnet. It went fine for the most part. We've had a lot of issues enabling Pectra or implanting the fork on the various testnet. It failed on Holski. It failed. Well, I mean, when I say it failed, it didn't go as planned initially.
Correct.
It failed also on Sepolia in some ways. And then it was recovered. And then now we have Hoodie, this new testnet where we kind of recovered the whole Holski use case for staking by just creating a new testnet, which
that's right.
Which just worked, right? It eventually worked for everyone.
I mean, I know that you are a big fan of new testnets. You reset yours, what, every month? Your Ephemery testnet?
We also run Ephemery, which resets every month, which is another one you could use. But yeah, yeah. So Pectra worked fine on mainnet, but a lot of users that we've been replying to are kind of confused still with all of the new features. We have a few guides and there's a lot of documentation, but sometimes people just are having issues finding them. The main thing that Pectra brings is this new compounding a validator where you can have way more than 32 ETH on your validator balance to enable you to produce more rewards. We won't go into all of these details, but there's a lot of guides on how to do this. If you want to migrate to this new validator type, you can use the official launchpad, right? So we've been working on the launchpad to improve it in order to make it easier for anyone to do these additional actions that you can now do on your validator through the withdrawal address, for instance, right? So the withdrawal address is the address that is really controlling now the validator. You can still use all of the previous consensus features if you want to exit, for instance. But now you can also exit through sending just a transaction. You can add more founds on your type 2 validator, your compounding validator. You can consolidate multiple validators into one, potentially lowering your own burden as a validator, but also through the network. With the lower amount of validator, it gets easier for everyone, right? And what else? There's a bunch of different tools that you could use. There's Pectrify.com, which is a different tool for converting your type 1 validator to a type 2, the compounding one. There's the eStaker deposit CLI that you could use now to just deposit a new validator and create one that is compounding from the get-go. What else? We got a bunch of guides that I can't remember now.
I see a lot of links coming in the description here.
Yeah,
with
we should
guides
add a few links in the video descriptions. You could just look down there and see a bunch of these guide there. Do you have any other resources, tool, or elements that I missed from what happened
Not
with
so much.
Pectra?
I'd like to hear your thought on consolidating a validator or using this new compounding type. How should people think about whether to even do this? Like, what's the pros and cons of staying on the old or going with the new?
Well, that's a good question. Like, if you are committed for the long term and you just want to have your reward compound over time, just convert your validator to type 2. And then you will still need to deposit the execution rewards because those will still come through the address that you configured for that in your clients. But then all the consensus rewards will automatically accrue on your balance, and you as the balance increases, it's in 1 ETH increments. Potentially, you will get more reward because now the amount of reward is really based on the amount of ETH that you stake. So, well, it still was previously, right? You could have multiple validators, multiple 32 ETH being used as your stake and creating rewards, but now it's much more easier to have like 33 or 34 ETH working for you in increments of 1 ETH.
And how does liquidity work in that case? If somebody wants like their monthly stipend from the validator?
That's a good question. So if you have a type 2 validator, a compounding one, you won't have those automatic withdrawals, right? So as you know, the type 1, the original validator with a withdrawal address, as soon as you had more than 32 ETH on balance, it would get automatically withdrawn on your withdrawal address. But now the max amount for the type 2, the new type, is 2048. And so if you want to withdraw any amount of that, you can still do it, but now there's a manual process where you can choose the amount you want to withdraw at any time. You will still have to incur some fees because this is now an execution side transaction. So you perform this special transaction, you say how much you want to withdraw. You still have to keep at least 32 ETH on balance. But as long as you do, you can withdraw any amount and at any time, assuming you pay the gas fees and there's a small rate limiting fee as well.
Right. Yeah, so when I think about this, right, so if you like liquidity, then maybe the old style is better. If you like compounding rewards, and I think Jim from Attestant said you can get up to 0.1 points more. So if you previously made 3%, now it's 3.1%, maybe, if you have enough ETH in there, right? So it's a little bit of an uplift. It's not a huge uplift. And maybe it's type 2. I'm also thinking about this withdrawal from the execution layer. Now, I don't know about you, Remy, but my plan for my life is to just stay young forever. Unfortunately, reality gets in the way, right? So I have to think about my heirs. I have to think what happens when I die. And to leave an instruction that says, take this hardware wallet, go here to Launchpad, connect with that, there's one validator, hit the exit button, and the monies will be with you shortly, is a lot easier than to go, here's all the public keys, and here's how you use F2.
Well, I mean, it's all gonna be complex no matter what, I think. So if you're in this situation, and like this is another whole discussions about like how you should be managing your inheritance and like your estate. But yeah, I feel like you just have to find a good tech guy to help you with this. Like someone else
who will not rug your heirs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. I feel like that's one of the best solution potentially, but yeah, I don't know. There's no easy path there.
There's a sort of easy path. I still kind of like the idea of pre-signing an exit message the old way.
Yeah.
And
that
leaving
still works,
that
right?
file. Yeah, it still works. Leaving that file for your descendants and just saying, drag and drop this into Beacon Chain.
Yep.
And the monies will show up over here in this hardware wallet. That's maybe the easiest,
Probably.
Yeah, and we managed to shill Beacon Chain. Hi, Pectra.
Should we move on to the next topic? We had a few questions from you posted on Reddit asking the community what kind of question we should be answering, and we had a good one. We had a good one from Superfizz asking, how do you see the Ethereum protocol valuing or devaluing solo and home stakers over time, and do you think there's a trend in one direction or the other? I'll let you have a quick take on that one.
You want me to have a stab at that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the Ethereum protocol as such, so that's all the researchers who work on the Ethereum protocol and all core devs and all that, right? It's not one unified thing. The Ethereum protocol as such has, or some researchers that work on the Ethereum protocol have some values such as censorship resistance, right? And in order to get that, you need more than just one honest party to be censorship resistant. So this is an example of where decentralization comes in, right? So why decentralization? It's for things like censorship resistance, capture resistance, and so on. So it's not just one entity, and some nation state could come and say, you must censor this, or you must now change these parameters, and they can't much do about it. So in that way, I think the Ethereum protocol values solo and home stakers, and we have seen this. If you go onto the Ethereum Magicians, and we should link this, Vitalik just recently posted something that said, as we scale the layer 1, Ethereum itself, and also scale the layer 2s with it, all the various rollups that connect to Ethereum, how can we keep home staking in mind so that we're not excluding people, right? I think, and that's not just home staking, that's also home nodes. So for the staking part, obviously space is a concern. We talked about that earlier. So all these
bandwidth is
another
big one for some people.
Bandwidth is another big one, right? Space and bandwidth are probably the two biggest ones. They're thinking about that, how to keep that under control. The details are way too technical to go into in detail here, but we'll link the Magician's post where you can see Vitalik talking about this. So my take is the researchers are trying to thread the needle between scale the protocol, have it do more, and still make it possible to run nodes. I even see some efforts that go towards the idea to say you can have a tiny, tiny lightweight node right in your wallet, in your phone, so that you are no longer relying on Infura or something like that to submit a transaction or verify the chain. You can do that yourself with ZK proofs.
Exactly.
That's way future talk, right? That's not now. How do you see it?
I think you pretty much spelled it out. I think the values that Ethereums are is trying to promote, especially decentralization, is really the base there. I don't see any kind of special rewards given to solo stakers or like home stakers, because it would be so hard to implement in like in any kind of protocol. In terms of like how many solo stakers or home stakers are on the network, I don't believe it's much. The last few stats that I've seen are like around 5%.
Which is a lot. Honestly, I think that's a
Yeah,
lot.
it is not nothing. But yeah, I feel like there's no special attention given to home or solo stakers, but like the values behind Ethereum is really what promotes everyone to be able to run a node at home. And we've seen this with the discussion you've talked about. Like there's very there's a lot of concerns in trying to keep this low in terms of resources, and trying to better defines the role that we will have in the futures in terms of like who's having to run this whole stack, or who's having to build block, or like who's having to keep this history for the long term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you look at Portal, for example, where all of the nodes keep a little bit of history, right? Or you look at block building. Block building is now very centralized. It will probably stay that or become even more so. The same is true for proving, right? That's a very heavy activity. Um, the point here, though, with block building is, okay, what do we want decentralized? Well, censorship resistance. So if we can have inclusion lists that are with home stakers and decentralized, and so force a centralized builder to follow that, then the goal has been reached. I think always to keep in mind is to look at why decentralization. What is it achieving? It's a means to an end. It's not an end in and of itself. It's a means to an end. But we do need it. Right? Without it, if we just put everything into a data center, we could just have an SQL database again and be a bank.
Exactly.
That's not the idea, right?
And we've seen this happening with some other chains we won't be mentioning here, where
Right?
it brings a lot of downsides. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, why we're doing this is to provide people with the means to own their own assets and be able to transaction on their own, um, on their own rules, and like follow the change with the chain, right? The whole point of the blockchain is not to rebuild those big banks that we all know caused a lot of
Absolutely.
havoc.
So I think my closing comment on this question is it's nuanced, it's complex. Do read the Ethereum Magician's posts and other posts about it. It does not lend itself to a Twitter soundbite.
Exactly. All right, let's move to the next one from Maximus Lora. Is having a backup node good practice, i.e. having another instance that can be used as a fallback for your validator to avoid downtime if Nethermind becomes corrupted or others issues like that? I think it's a good idea. It depends on your setup, right? We've had people trying to build fancy fallback setups in the past with automatic fallbacks that failed and caused slashing events, which were bad, essentially. But like slashing is very uncommon these days. We haven't seen much of it, so I'm guessing not many people are trying these. But having just a running node as a potential like quick way to get back online with your validator is not a bad idea. I know there's like a lot of different complex setups that you could use, but like one easy one, like one of the easiest one you could use, is just running your own validator client that points to two different consensus node, right?
Exactly. So my take on this is it really depends on why you want that backup node, right? It could be you're such a whale that it just makes sense. Well, in that case, your validator client is probably in a cloud somewhere, and then maybe you have some home distributed, as you say, Ethereum nodes, and you can have multiple that you point to. But often it's also just, I like to play with it, in which case, go for it. But if the concern is, well, how much am I losing if I'm down? I'm nervous, right? Don't be nervous. One, the rescue node exists. So if you're saying, my Nethermind is down, what do I do? Well, if you only have a handful of validators, first relax, breathe. This costs less than your latte at Trader Joe's or wherever you get your latte, right? I don't think Trader Joe's sells lattes. I'm thinking of somebody else. And then secondly, Nethermind in particular will resync in 1 to 2 hours to where you can attest. So you can just do nothing, right? If it takes you a little longer because you're like, I'm not sure what I'm doing, I need help, I'm busy right now, this will take days. Well, take a little bit of time out, go to Rescue Node, register with it, point your validator client at Rescue Node. Now you have time to figure out what happened to your consensus layer client and execution layer client and get those up and running again, right? And then swing back off Rescue Node. That's what it's for. We have a Rescue Node channel in the Discord. It's super easy to use. Patches and team are doing an amazing job. This is originally a Rocket Pool idea. It still is a Rocket Pool idea, but they allow use by solo stakers, which is very gracious of them. And I'm grateful the tool exists. It's amazing. So my answer is, from a purely math perspective, you really have to have a massive amount of stake before having a backup node. Even just a second node that your other client points to makes any kinds of dollars and cents, right? Like the cost of running that bandwidth, capex, and what you pay for the machine, right? The power, your effort in maintaining it greatly outweighs the couple cappuccinos worth of money that you lose when you're down for a day.
And like with
So,
many of these questions, it's often like risk management that you have to do in the end, right? What's the risk? What's the cost of that risk? And like, what are you willing to assume in terms of like insurance policy?
exactly. But then there's the other part of that, which is, but I just need a good excuse to run a second Linux machine. Listen, don't let me stop you.
If you like it, just go for it, right? And
That's right.
and this reminds me of like some of the earlier support requests that we've been doing in terms of like people concerned with their hardware specs. Initially, when we were trying to figure out what kind of specs and hardware you should be running, people were throwing different kinds of numbers around, and then
Right.
people would just ask us like, can I run this like on a 4 disk RAID setup with like this beefy machine server with like 128 gig of RAMs, and like if you just like it, just go for it. But maybe that's not required initially.
That's right. So there was a similar question in the Discord, actually, that was from somebody who had been running their stuff with a provider and went to solo staking. And it gets a little bit towards this backup node question, right? So the first thing they were unaware of, what I want everybody to be aware of, your validator client, the thing that has the key, it can point to more than one Ethereum node.
And
And
that's the
it will fail
basis of
over or
like,
will round
yeah.
robin, etc. All of them can do that, right? So you can just have your one validator client. That's where the keys are. Never move your keys because that means slashing risk.
And the validator client is a
And
very light process, right? So you can be run
super light,
anywhere.
super lightweight, right? And then if you want 2 or 3 Ethereum nodes for that to point to, so that if, say, your Nethermind corrupts, you need to resync it, you can do that, and then the second node takes over. So that's a really easy thing. The other thing they wanted to know was, when I restart my client, am I at slashing risk? The answer is no. There's a slashing protection database in the validator client or in the Web3 signer, if that's what you're using on a DApp node. Specifically so that doesn't happen. Right? If you restart it, it'll look at that database and say, Did I already sign this duty? Yes. Okay, I'm not doing anything.
Good point. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that brings us
Anything else you want to add?
I think that just brings us to the end of our first episode here.
Lovely.
Before I let you go, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, if you need support for any of the topic that we've mentioned or just staking in general, we're happy to help you. And Yorick does a great job every day. If you just go on our Discord, the eStaker Discord, you'll see we try to answer everyone's questions whenever we see them, almost 24/7. When we are just awake. And we have a lot of great people that are answering the questions there. You could also find us on the eStaker subreddit on Reddit on /eStaker. So if you have any questions, just go there and we will be happy to help you.
Exactly. Thank you, Remy. This was fun.
Thank you, Royak, and we'll see you next time.